Okay, so the last screw for that, we need the Noctua screwdriver again, which I've put. 1 second. Where is the? Whoa, who are you?
Well, nobody really. I'm from the future, and us spent a lot of time filming this, looking for this, and I thought I'm going to save some time for you and give you this.
Oh. Well, thank you.
Right, what video is this, by the way?
Oh, this one. This is the small form factor PC, the small, powerful, beautiful, and even though it doesn't have 10 gigabit Ethernet, you see, I can still get transfer speeds up to 1.1 gigabytes per second through my NAS.
Yeah. You're not using Asus motherboards, are you?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, flipping heck. Well, look, just to let you know, people are still going mental about the Asus motherboards RMA thing, you know, all that craziness videos on two comments. You should, wow, you should see them.
Really? Is that still going on?
Huh. Yeah. Wait till you read some of the comments about this video. Do ourselves a favor and don't mention it's an Asus motherboard, okay?
What should I say then?
Say it's from ASOS. Remember that box? Honestly, at this point, anything but Asus, okay? By the way, you forgot to do the intro.
Oh, biscuits. Hey!
Why don't I do ourselves another favor and rewind this thing back in time, and then you can do the intro again, okay?
Okay.
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 Okay. Is it gonna hurt though?
Nah, just don't mention the Asus motherboards.
I kind of lied to you on the little bit earlier because I'm not getting just 1.1 gigabytes per second transfer speed to my NAS. It's a lot faster than that, and I'll show you that in a minute. So for the CPU, we're choosing the 14700K, which is an 8P core and 12E core variant. Now, why not 13700K? Well, because I wanted more cores, and the i9s are a little bit too much for this cooling, I believe, but the i7, we can kind of get away with this cooling, and I was interested also how much cooling can we put into this PC. And because the LGA 1700 socket, we can still upgrade it to i9 14900K if we wanted to, but I believe this is kind of the sweet spot of high performance and still being able to cool it. And I was curious, how much power can we push through this little CPU? And I really needed Intel QuickSync, so that's what this is also going to give us. Next comes the cooling. Now, we needed the best cooling possible in this small form factor, and for this motherboard particularly, so we went with Noctua NH-L12S-X77. So we have up to 77 millimeters of cooling for this case. That's the maximum air cooler allowed in there. And this Noctua cooler is the one that provided us this. And the cooler is, there is literally not a single millimeter left for the cooling, height. The cooler is sitting right on the side of the grill in here and gives us really good RAM clearance. We can put in pretty much any RAM we want in there. It's really, really nice. For RAM, we're using the AITC Kingsman Vertex RGB RAM in there. So these are white sticks. These kind of bring a little bit more light to inside the case and shows us kind of like the guts are lighting up. And the RGB, I was kind of confused which RGB do I want to put there, but I think the white one, I'm always reverting to very simple colors with the RGB. I'm not the one who goes all over the place with the RGB. So this white one, really nice in there. By the way, this is 7200 megahertz and it runs super stable. What I've tested so far, it's awesome. Now it's 32 gigabytes, that's the only downside, but it is 7200 megahertz. And CL34, that is super fast RAM for this, and it's running really, really good. Now, Newegg actually sent me a code and said that for special limited time only, with this code on the screen right now, you can get extra $15 off until the stock lasts. For SSD, we're using the Samsung 990 Pro 1TB version. There is two M.2 SSD slots on the motherboard, one of them Gen 5 actually. I think the Samsung 990 Pro is one of the fastest drives that I have tested. I don't think that, but you can see the videos. And for OS drive, that's a super fast drive. Now, if I went with the secondary drive, I'd probably get the 4TB Samsung 990 Pro, because I think the Gen 4 high-end is still better bang for buck rather than the Gen 5 drives that are super fast, but actually quite a bit more expensive. So I think this Samsung one offers us solid performance, very good quality, and really good performance as well. Then the motherboard. Now this is where things get a little bit spicy and people might get upset. I'm using the Asus Z790i Strix motherboard. Now this is not cheap, and it's one of the nicest motherboards you can get for the LGA 1700 socket. For a long time, this was one of the, if not the only motherboard in the world that had Thunderbolt 4 on the ITX form factor, which is going to be absolutely crucial in a minute. I'll show you this. For expandability or getting fast connectivity in there, it's super awesome. You can even convert it now from Thunderbolt 4 to 10 gigabit Ethernet, but with other ITX boards, it wasn't possible. Until recently, I actually found that ASRock does have an ITX Z790 motherboard that also has Thunderbolt 4 ports on the motherboard. It is slightly cheaper as well. I'm going to leave it linked in the description below as well. It's called ASRock Z790 PG ITX TB4, standing for Thunderbolt 4. Now the Asus one still has a little bit of a better I/O and probably a bit better cooling for the VRMs, but the ASRock one actually has more M.2 slots and 2 Thunderbolt ports, and for most people, probably the best pick. And now when I'm thinking about it again, I wish I kind of got the ASRock one. But the Asus one has something special, which is this hive, which ASRock doesn't have. This hive allows you to see the boot sequence, for example. So when you're building the PC, you can see whether, you know, you're on CPU training or if it passes CPU, RAM, VGA, and post. This is very, very helpful, as well as gives you the BIOS flashback via USB on this hive, which is not actually possible through ASRock, and not a lot of ITX motherboards actually allow you to have BIOS flashback, but this one here does through the hive, which is pretty cool. Now it allows you to change the volume and gives you actually audio controls here as well, because the Asus motherboard doesn't have any audio controls on the back of the motherboard, neither on front of the case, so the only way to get the audio out is through this hive. Now let's talk about this beautiful case, which was the actual source of the whole idea of this build. This is the Fractal Terra, and I've done a video on this case on the channel before, and then we looked at the green version of this, but I think the silver one is the nicest looking one out of the bunch. There's 3 colors: black, green, and silver. Now I don't see a lot of silver builds online, but I think this is by far the nicest one out of the 3. All the panels are very, very thick, solid. Is just a beautiful, beautiful case to look at. I like the wood accent in there as well as the power button. It is really, really nice. Perhaps the only downside with the case is that right now I can see it going for $180, which can perhaps be a little bit expensive, but the build experience for this inside the case was really, really good and really nice. The way the spine moves and the access to everything is really well thought through, and I really enjoy that. Then comes the GPU on this side, which we use the Asus ProArt RTX 4080 Super. And this is probably the most powerful GPU that you can put in this PC build without compromising any CPU cooling. Because of the spine moves, when you want to put a fatter GPU in there, you actually get less clearance for your CPU cooling, but because this ProArt 4080 Super is only 2.5 slots thick, I think, so this slots in there just right, and it is like 0.5 millimeters off the actual grill on the side there to not stop the fans moving. Now you could go with Intel Arc as well. If you wanted to do like an AMD and Intel kind of a combo, you probably could save quite a lot of money. But in terms of 3D and really powerful GPU performance, there is nothing better than this ProArt 4080 Super. Now I wish we had more than 16 gigabytes of VRAM, but still 60 gigabytes of VRAM is the most we can get in this small form factor. And lastly, for the PSU, we're using the Cooler Master V1300, which is a 1300 watt power supply for the ITX or SFX form factor, which is insane amount of power. Now, this supports the 12 volt high power cable, which perfectly fits with our 4080 Super there. Even though the cable has had quite a lot of hate and questions since it was launched, for cable clutter and cleanness of the PC build, it's perfect. You have a small cable, it's very concise, and you're not gonna have a lot of different cables to give power for the rest of the components in your system. Now, I absolutely agree that this is an overkill for this system, but it just showcases how much power you can put into small form factor like that and overclock the heck out of this if you wanted to. And it's 80+ platinum rated for power efficiency, which we can all appreciate because of the electricity prices. Now, I don't think there is another 1300 watt SFX power supply out there in the world. I mean, you let me know. I think this is probably the top of the top. The video editing doesn't actually matter, or does it? Let me introduce you to Movavi Video Editor, your go-to tool for simple and fast video editing. Movavi leverages AI technology to provide tools for better videos, whether this is background removal, motion tracking, or cleaning up your audio. Movavi focuses on speeding up your video editing with a simple interface and a drag and drop workflow. Hey, even if you've never edited a video, you'll get the hang of it in no time with Movavi. Plus, it includes royalty-free music to help you get monetized on social media without any strikes. The included color grade presets make it easy to achieve that cinematic look. If you want to add the extra touch, then the Movavi FX Store is the place to check out. With a library of over 6,000 effects and music, no more complicated workflow. Just drag and drop the overlays and transitions you'd like. And whether you're on Windows or Mac, it's available on both. So Movavi is meant for beginners, YouTubers, time savers. You want to get started with video editing, Movavi is for you. And you can edit something like this. Check them out using the link in the video description below to get a 27% discount when using the code MOVEMAC. Thanks Movavi for sponsoring this video, and back to talking about this guy here. So how much is this build? This exact configuration that I have over here is going to set you back roughly around $2,500. Now, if you check out the links in the description below, I'm going to leave some alternatives for you if you just want to save a little bit of money or go with a slightly different part, or you don't want to get the fan or something like that. You can probably shave quite a lot, especially if you don't go with this 4080 Super but go with the ARC A770 from Acer, for example. Feel free to dive in the description below and then just find some of the links and check out some of the alternatives. But I want to talk about another very interesting thing that Noctua sent me with the cooler. This is quite an insanely designed and engineered product, as Noctua always does. Now, this is quite expensive, and for what the product actually costs, it probably doesn't make sense unless you like Noctua and you like the product. You can get a desk fan quite a lot cheaper, but I think this goes roughly around $100. But let me talk to you what this actually does. So basically, Noctua created a product where you can repurpose your computer fans. So this one over there is Noctua's NFA12X25 fan, which is one of their, most famous fans in there. But they created this shroud and this system around it that where you can just attach them as the desk fan and then just have it blow air either onto you or whatever. And it looks quite minimal as well. And you use your normal PWM connectors from your, PC. So basically you've got a little grill in the back that saves you from, touching the fan. And then this shroud in the front that actually blows it out from here. It's kind of like a Dyson hairdryer, like that. Then you've got this little controller in here where the fan plugs in. This is a normal PWM connector. Click in there. And then here you can just adjust the fan speed to put it or less however much you want. Now, you don't necessarily have to put a Noctua fan in here because any fan supports this, which I think is an awesome thing. And I wish other manufacturers would do a similar thing where we would have this casing for other fans, maybe perhaps a little bit cheaper without the fan, where we can just put our whatever fans in there and then just get, you know, just use it as desk fans, right? Underneath here, you actually have magnets, so you can actually put this on your PC case or something like that if you wanted to. Quite strong magnets underneath here, as well as some screw mounts and zip tie mounts if you want to attach it to whatever thing in the studio. Now, you can actually make the bracket wider to 140 millimeters as well. Just do these 4 screws and move them a little bit wider, and now you can attach 140 millimeter fans there as well. The only problem is when you've got 140 millimeter fan, this shroud doesn't work anymore because this only goes to the 120 millimeter one. I think the concept and idea is very, very good. Obviously, Noctua's done it first and made a premium product. Now we can see all the other manufacturers gonna rip this idea off and make cheaper versions available. Now, let's do a CPU test and GPU test, and then I'll talk to you some of the problems that I had in this. So as you can see, 14700K, XFB is enabled for RAM 7200 MHz, SSD, iGPU, and our GPU is all in there. Firstly, let's try Cinebench R23. Let's press go. I think we're going to be thermal throttling because the power limit here is 253 watts. So 200 watts, look at that. 95. Okay, I think now we're thermally throttling there. Yeah, quite a bit. Goes to 100 degrees because it tries to push 250 watts and make the P cores go how fast? Okay, now they're 4.8. But 31,000 points. That is absolutely ridiculous. Now, if you open the side panel, you can get a little bit of a better performance because the airflow is better out from the case. So let's try this again. Look, 5.4 at first, then 4.9, 5. So it does clock itself down. Still pushes 230 watts out from here, which is pretty impressive actually. I mean, the heat pipes are absolutely red hot. Woo! It downclocks itself quite a bit. I guess we already oversaturated first run on this. I guess 240 watts isn't good for that. It's slowly cooling down now. It's still like 63 degrees, the CPU package. Look at that, 53 degrees now, because it's cooling the system down. Now, what I want to try out is the GPU stress test, because here now we can put extreme amount of power for our GPU. CPU package is still pulling about 40 watts. Now our fans from the Asus ProArt are on there. That's an interesting thing because the way this is actually shaped, it makes quite a lot of noise. Can you hear that? The fan blades going around this kind of a shaped mesh on the side there makes quite a loud noise. That's quite annoying actually. That's really, really annoying noise. 320 watts. I guess the back of the GPU now goes really, really warm. So all I'm curious about now is once the GPU is quite warm there, as you can see, it's still climbing. The hotspot is 92.5 degrees. I wonder, I'm gonna let it plateau and then I'm gonna open the side to see actually if it makes any difference. But as you can see, it does transfer a little bit of heat to the CPU because we're only pulling 40 watts from the CPU, but because the back of the CPU is very close to the VRMs on the back of the GPU, because they're close together, it probably heats up the CPU as well. As you can see, our wattage has gone down, but we're still like 67 degrees, which gets heated up from the other side. Let's keep an eye on this. So we've kind of plateaued at 79.4 degrees, 79 degrees. Now I'm gonna open the side panel. Let's see if that is gonna increase the airflow and actually help with the temperature. It helps with the noise, for sure. Instantly, look at that. How many degrees are we down now? Look at that. That's a huge drop. So as you can see, probably the fans being so close to the end here causes quite a lot of turbulence and the airflow isn't as good to let it out. Look at the difference there. The hotspot's gone to 85 degrees from 92.7 and it's still going down. That's absolutely insane. And if I put this back, but I'm gonna take the top off. Now we've kind of plateaued now again with the top panel off. And as you can see, having the top panel off doesn't necessarily make the temperature a lot better because we're about 0.5 degrees lower than previously when the top panel was on. So the top panel is not very restrictive, letting the air out. As you can see, there's no mesh or anything. It just lets it all out. But the side panel makes a huge difference. Now let's go back to our CPU, see how this is going. As you can see, we're 74 degrees sometimes at 40 watts, 60 degrees. So perhaps I made a mistake, put too powerful of a GPU in there and there's actually no space for it to breathe. Or what you could do is, because it's so easy accessible, when you're working with it, just not doing very heavy on the GPU, just have it like that, it looks beautiful. And then when you start doing GPU rendering or gaming or something heavy on the GPU, you can just open it and your GPU is going to be very, very quiet and still perform very, very, very well, because it's very easy to open it. So what about the CPU then? Is this cooler enough for this? I think for most cases it's going to be enough, because when you're doing video editing or rendering or something like that, you're using the single core performance most of the time. And when I'm doing Photoshop or something like that, again, you're using single core and it's not going to be a problem at all. In fact, even if it goes to 102 degrees, the CPU cooler is actually not going to go very loud, so it's going to be all right. It's going to clock itself down, but that's that. Now, would I go with the i9? Absolutely not. I think the i7 is very much on the limit there, what we can do with this. I didn't use the contact frame, but I'm going to leave it in the description below, because that would actually reduce the cooling even more, a little bit, and would keep your CPU lasting longer. And bear in mind, I'm using Intel stock settings, enforcing all limits, as you can see there. Now, let's talk about some of the mistakes I made. Firstly, on the B-roll, when you see me building the PC, you can see that the CPU cooler I attached or installed the other way. By the way, getting the side panels off, super easy. Just like that. So I installed the cooler facing the other way so that the heat pipes are on this side and the cooler kind of goes over the RAM. But that is not recommended, because the RAM is actually higher than the heat sinks of the VRMs and the cooler goes over there. Now, the cooler is actually a little bit bouncy, and my cooler was a little bit kind of angled outward. So it wasn't the way the cooler should be, is like a U shape, but it was a little bit like that. The top heatsink was that, so I bent it a little bit this way, but it's still right now a bit facing up like that way. If it was flat like that, I could push it in. If we're looking at it from the top, there you can see probably easier that the cooler is actually hanging out a little bit from this side. And in order to close the side panel, I do have to push the cooler. You can see it's hanging out a little bit. I'm going to have to push the cooler a little bit so that the side panel actually gets clipped in. So look, when we close this, as you can see, we do push the panel a little bit, because I should have bent it a little bit more to get it in a little more, but it does stick it in. You can see it sometimes pushes out a little bit on this edge. It's not 100% like fit in there just because of this cooler. But to actually fix this, I actually saw something that I never saw before. Now, these clips over here, this is actually a screw hole. So if you push it in on both sides, underneath here there is a screw hole, and you can actually screw it in and make it completely flat, and that will kind of push this in there, which I might actually do for the CPU cooler side, because that would hold it nice and tight and nicely parallel with the rest of the side, because you can actually screw the side panels in and hold it tightly in. Secondly, update the BIOS. Now, since I had this motherboard, it had very early BIOS, probably like a 13th gen, early 13th gen support. But when I was trying to put with the 14th gen, it wasn't giving me a boot and stuff, so it was a little bit all over the place. And bear in mind that you can update it with the Hive. I forgot that, so I made my life super complicated. I pulled the cooler out, installed different RAM, different CPU, thinking what is going on, put like an earlier version of the CPU in, then it boasted, then I updated it on BIOS, but I could have made my life so much simpler by just updating the BIOS via this. Even if I had the unsupported CPU and RAM even installed in there, it doesn't matter, you can still update the BIOS because of the BIOS flashback on this. And the last one is the CPU and GPU combo. I think I probably stretched it just too much for this. Perhaps we needed this case to be like 2 millimeters wider, something like that. Then we would have fit a little bit better. Is it too much? I'm still excited to actually use it and see how well it's going to do. And I really like that you can see a little bit on the top there, the RAM shining, a little bit of like a life inside the PC. So if you look at this way, you can see that the Kingsman RAM there shining a little bit of RGB, and the white in there gives a little bit of lightness inside the PC case as well. Now then, here's something that you've been waiting for. Let me show you the transfer speeds of this, okay? My NAS is gonna make some noise now. Oh, by the way, I did a little Photoshop score in here just to see like how fast the 7200 megahertz 32 gigabytes RAM is. There we go, if you want to check it out. Let me know how fast is yours. But check this out. So this is the mapped folder on my NAS. This is the QNAP NAS. I've done a video on my channel before. Actually fits really nicely in the color theme in there, but my editor is already editing on it right now. So now I'm just the second client connected to the NAS, and we're gonna take our, let's see, this one here. This is the same PC building it. I'm gonna pull some files onto the desktop, and we're gonna read from the NAS onto our SSD inside there. And we're gonna play replace, and look at that. 1.26 gigabytes read speeds from the NAS. And I can see my editor's literally reading files on it as well, on Premiere Pro editing right now at the same time. So I'm the second client doing this. When I did it before the video, actually testing this was like 1.5 gigabytes per second read speed, something like that. Let's take the same folder, whatever 40 gigabytes that it was, and I'm gonna write onto the NAS. Let's see the speeds now. 1.9, that's even faster than before. That's 2 gigabytes per second write speeds. Look at that, 1.99 gigabytes per second write speeds. It's pretty much double the speed that I promised you earlier. Did you see? We clocked 2. That was 2 gigabytes per second. There we go. This is insane. And that's why the Thunderbolt ports are super, super important. Now, you can convert the Thunderbolt port to 10 gigabit Ethernet, but it's going to be slower because the Thunderbolt connection to the Thunderbolt NAS is going to be faster than the 10 gigabit Ethernet. As you can see, 2 gigabytes per second transfer speed, not some theoretical speeds of something, but actual transfer speeds from there to the NAS. That's absolutely ridiculous. The only thing is, Thunderbolt 4 cables can't go above 2.5 meters, I believe, or something like that. So bear that in mind, that you have to have the Thunderbolt NAS very, very close to you. Yes, the Thunderbolt was disconnected. In conclusion, I am super happy and excited about this. You're probably gonna see me use this quite a bit on the background of a lot of videos when I'm doing stuff. I'm gonna leave all the links in the description below, as well as some of the alternatives. And if you do want to ask me any questions, reach out on Minect. I get back to all of my messages through Minect within 24 hours. That's been kind of my record for so far. And if you want to build yourself not a small form factor PC or some other best bang for buck Creator PC builds, they're linked in the description below. Thanks guys for watching, and as always, I'll meet you in the comment section below. Bye bye.